Hi, my name is Judi Friedman, and I live in Canton, Connecticut. I'm chairperson of PACE, People's Action for Clean Energy, and I thank you for watching this program tonight because I feel it's a very, very serious subject that we're going to be discussing. It's a subject that you don't hear about on TV, you don't hear about on the radio, and you don't read about it either. It's such a taboo subject that it's almost never mentioned, and yet it is of vital importance not only to our health, but maybe to the survival of our species as we know it. PACE, People's Action for Clean Energy, is an organization that has been in place since 1974. It was started at Wesleyan University by professors and students who were concerned about the building of a nuclear power plant in Middletown. And they gathered together, created this organization, and defeated that plant, stopped it from being built in Middletown. That plant then was supposedly going to be built in Massachusetts, and that plant was never built either. So this organization has been working on the issue of nuclear power since 1974. About 20 years ago, however, our board decided that we needed to not only work on nuclear power, but think about solutions that could get us beyond nuclear. And we're very interested in going into a world that is safe from nuclear power and from the terrible ramifications of this technology. We urge you, please, to go on our website. As you will see, it's www.pace-cleanenergy.org, and sign up and join our organization. You will feel good, I think, because you'll be contributing to safer energy and meeting a wonderful group of caring people. One aspect of our organization that people seem to treasure very much is that we hold solar tours all over the state of Connecticut and attract many, many people. One of our tours was the subject of Connecticut Public Television show last June and has attracted people from other states too. So we urge you to join us and hear more about PACE. The reason we're so concerned about energy is that we think that Connecticut's very high cancer and asthma rates are related to our energy output. We are breathing very dirty air from the Midwest, but we are also generating dirt into our air. And by dirt, I mean more than what we normally would consider dirty. I mean unseen particles that are affecting our health very, very seriously. I'm sure many of you know people who have breast cancer. Breast cancer is a very, very great problem in Connecticut. And we're talking about cures, and people are running for cures, and that's wonderful. But let's talk about preventing cancer and preventing asthma, because our power plants are also the cause of much of our asthma. Our power plants are also the cause of mercury poisoning. It is not safe to eat any fish caught in the state of Connecticut because of the high mercury content. And we can do something about that, and that's what our organization is interested in. We work with many other wonderful organizations in Connecticut. We are very, very, very team-oriented. We work with safe energy organizations and anti-nuclear organizations across the country and, in fact, across the world. We're even working with an organization that is working against nuclear power in space. That is probably the scariest idea I can think of. If the 17 pounds of plutonium that had been on the Cassini, had been on the Challenger, when it exploded, we would have lost the state of Florida. That's pretty scary stuff. Today we have an expert that I'm very excited to introduce you to, in fact, two experts. One of them is the board member of the Citizens Awareness Network. And he's here to tell you his story. And I'm going to ask, his name is Sal Mangiagli, and I'm going to ask him to first of all tell us how he got involved in this incredible issue, because he's been working for a long time.
Hi, Judy. Gosh, it was a long time ago. It was the late 80s. I had become involved, and it was actually my wife's fault.
Oh dear, poor Ro.
Because she was concerned about the children, and she started calling some of the state agencies to find out what kind of monitoring was going on. Because we live a mile from the Connecticut Yankee nuclear reactor in Haddam, Connecticut, on the Connecticut River. And that pretty much started it. She is a scientist herself. She has a background in chemistry, and she wasn't getting any satisfactory answers. And that was, I believe it was 1988, 89, and we're still looking for those answers.
So what did she discover that upset her? What was the problem?
Well, that the at that time the tumor registry wasn't funded. They weren't tracking tumors.
Can you explain, please, what the tumor registry is?
Well, the as well as I know of it, the tumor registry is the state of Connecticut and the medical establishment keeping track of people that have tumors and where they live. And if you were to plot this out on a map, you could actually see if there were clusters of sicknesses in certain areas, and you could begin to start tracking down the culprits. And the state wasn't, I don't want to say they weren't interested, but they weren't funded for it. It was mandated on the books, but it wasn't funded.
It was mandated on the books, but not funded. Who would be responsible for that funding?
I don't exactly know
how those
channels work, but it would be our legislators that would push for it, and I guess allocate the money from somewhere to go to fund that.
So is this
project.
something we might want to contact our legislators about?
Well, I'm not so sure, because I believe currently we do have a very good tumor registry in Connecticut, and a cancer registry as well.
And can you see the map of the clusters?
I don't believe they're mapping it like that clearly. I know that there's been some reports out of the New London area that has the highest cancer incidences in the state of Connecticut. And Joseph Mangano, the epidemiologist who had done this study, has he's actually claimed that the state of Connecticut has some of the best records on cancer incidents.
Well, I think this is something a lot of people aren't aware of. Our nuclear power plants emit routinely radioactive isotopes and chemicals. Very few people know that. They see these quiet plants. They don't know anything about it. They don't see any smoke. They don't smell anything. This must be a safe, clean source of energy. But actually, some of the decayed elements are strontium-89 are released from our nuclear power plants. That is a 52-day half-life. Cesium-127 is one of the decayed products that has a 30-year half-life. And tritium has a 12.3-year half-life. Tritium would take 10 half-lives with this radioactivity to effectively decay away. In other words, they're emitting radioactive isotopes into the air, water, and land cumulatively over all these years. And that's what could be causing the cancer. So you don't even need a meltdown or a terrorist attack to be bothered or get cancer from these plants. And we're not hearing about that. Is that what you think?
Well, that's one of the first issues that the Citizens Awareness Network, as it formed, it actually formed in Rowe, Massachusetts, around the Yankee Rowe reactor. And Connecticut, we opened the Connecticut chapter in 91 or 92, but we had been working with this other group, some friends of ours that lived near the Yankee Row reactor. And the issue of, when they were at these meetings because the town was thinking of shutting the reactor down, and the reactor vessel itself, the very heart of the reactor inside, is a carbon steel vessel. And after all the years of heating up and cooling down and being bombarded with all this radiation, it had become very embrittled. And if they had to go into an emergency shutdown and flood that reactor with cold water, it had the potential to shatter like glass. And the NRC, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, which oversees nuclear reactors, was going to allow it to keep operating. And after, while they were attending lots of meetings over that issue, they learned that the reactors were dumping into the Deerfield River every day. They were dumping radioactivity.
And they've been dumping into the Connecticut River and Long Island Sound.
Every reactor routinely releases radiation into the air out their stacks and dumping it into the rivers. They all have to be on bodies of water. They take massive amounts of water. Millstone Unit 3 alone takes in over 1 billion gallons of water a day.
1 billion gallons of water a day.
To cool that reactor, and it discharges almost the same amount, and it discharges radioactivity and it discharges chemicals. And it discharges the water hotter than the water that it took in. And so this issue of the, Judi talked about the half-lives of isotopes, and what happens is that there's this environmental accumulation that takes place, and it starts off, when the reactor first comes online, or whatever the emitter of the pollutant is, and if the nuclide has a half-life, of a long time, then it'll keep accumulating for that long time. And if it has a short half-life and it decays and becomes harmless, then it won't accumulate. But the nuclides that are released have very long half-lives, and so they accumulate. And when you take them into your body, you take them in small doses also, but they also accumulate in your body. They bioaccumulate and they enviro-accumulate.
Nevin, do you have any thoughts? I'm sure you do on this subject.
Well, you guys are depressing. But,
you're right.
No, it's...
This is the hardest part. The health issues, out of all of we cover a broad spectrum of nuke activity from mining to waste, and the health issue is the hardest issue to delve into because it's very painful and it's very depressing.
And you can't see it, feel it, hear it, or smell it, but we know that cancer's there.
Mm-hmm. Cancer rates certainly are going up, and we're not looking for the causes so much as looking for the cures, because that, I don't know, a lot of things have to do with money, and there's the key to why these nuclear plants are there, and we haven't promoted clean energy. It seems to be more concentrated in the hands of the people that can sell us that power. It's just been a bizarre thing to me, like forever, just the whole concept. I'm a farmer, hands-on. I understand rocks and solid things and stuff. Things like radioactivity frighten me, and rightfully so, I think, judging by some of the things I'm hearing tonight and some of the stuff I've known all along.
Well, the industry has actually played on exactly that kind of, it's like an intimidation of their jargon and the way that they talk, and the scientific community has this same problem, and one of the things that the Citizens Awareness Network likes to do is to break it down into lay terms, because we can all understand this. I'm a carpenter. I work with my hands, and I bang nails, and
also
play with wood.
The emissions I've dealt with first, because that's something that is ongoing. And people talk about nuclear waste. We all know that, but some people think, well, that's a problem for my grandchild or my great-grandchild. Nuclear waste from weapons and energy can affect unborn generations, up to 7,000 unborn generations. To me, that is the cardinal sin. I can't think of any more sinful act than to inflict poisons on unborn generations. So the waste is also a problem. Sal, can you tell us a little about how the waste from the nuclear plants is stored now and what your feeling about that is?
Well, Connecticut Yankee, the reactor I'm most familiar with, my neighbor, is almost complete with decommissioning. They've torn down the whole reactor, and the waste, the fuel rods, they go into the reactor, and then when they come out of the reactor, they're high-level radioactive waste. They're the internals of the reactor. There's baffle plates and things in there that get very irradiated. They are also high-level radioactive waste, and that's about it. Nothing else. Everything else is considered low-level waste. The high-level waste sat in spent fuel pools for the life of the reactor, and until a couple of years ago, it was all still in a spent fuel pool. A spent fuel pool at Connecticut Yankee is 40 foot deep and 60 foot long. The spent fuel has to be under 20 feet of water to shield the radiation from it. The spent fuel rods have been, what the industry has been doing, the Department of Energy was supposed to take the high-level waste off of the utilities' hands, and they had grand visions of reprocessing it and using it again in reactors. That reprocessing project fell apart, partly because it was very expensive, it was very filthy, and they were creating more waste streams than they were cleaning up. The process was a very filthy process. And so these fuel rods have been building up in these spent fuel pools, and the industry's solution as a temporary kind of fix is to take them out of the spent fuel pool and put them in what they call dry casks. And they're putting these spent fuel rods into these giant casks that are about 16 foot tall and 10 foot around with a lot of concrete and steel. And they're just, at this point, they're just putting them in there. They don't really know.
So your neighbors now are these casks parked 1 mile about from your home.
Yes.
And how many casks are there?
There's 43 casks that sit on a concrete pad about the size of a football field.
Do they have a roof over them of some kind?
There's no roof, and there's very limited security. As from a military standpoint, operating and unoperating reactors like Connecticut Yankee are soft targets from a military standpoint.
Well, that brings up a subject that concerns us very, very much, and that is terrorist attack. The waste is a problem, the emissions are a problem, but how about terrorism? We all know that the World Trade Center was struck by airplanes. What about hitting a nuclear power plant? The industry says the plants could withstand an attack like that, but there's another problem. The spent fuel is in containment areas that are not protected. Should a plane, such as hit the World Trade Center, fly into a containment area, we would have a nuclear meltdown. A nuclear meltdown, a nuclear accident is really beyond our belief. I've been in the Chernobyl area in Ukraine, and frankly, the cancers are still peaking from that accident. There are still cordoned off limited areas that are radioactive in Sweden and Wales, and the many children wear what's called the Chernobyl necklace. It's a scar from the thyroid operation that they were lucky enough to get. Those that didn't, of course, had another fate. This is a map. It shows very clearly nuclear power plants in the eastern half of our country and their location. Should they be attacked, and as Sal has said, they're soft targets, delicious targets, excuse the word, for terrorists. What better way to affect billions and billions of people? Because what happens is not only the people are affected, but the land is contaminated and it causes absolute havoc in other cities and other places too. So it would plunge our country not only into health crisis, but of course a terrible recession, depression. It would be frankly unbelievable. And Paul Gunter of the Nuclear Information Resource Service calls these weapons of mass destruction only waiting to be detonated. And that's really what pre-deployed weapons of mass destruction only waiting to be detonated. Do you have some comments on this
Yes,
map?
while you're holding this map up, you have the rings here, and this one out here shows 350 miles, bans on consumption of deer meat and wild berries. The 350-mile radius around, it looks like the Hartford area, covers almost all of Pennsylvania, almost all of Maine, and a part of Virginia, a 380-mile radius. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission, in its own study, which I would think is a bit on the conservative side of bad news, claims that a loss of water in a spent fuel pool would lead to a catastrophic accident that would call for a 500-mile radius evacuation, and that a 10-mile radius would be uninhabitable. Just forever.
And
it's just staggering that there haven't been more steps taken to safeguard these reactors.
This is a map of Indian Point, another reactor near Connecticut. Should an accident occur there, western Connecticut would be certainly affected. The Gold Coast, as someone say, of Connecticut, there's tremendous business and wealth there, and an accident at Indian Point. And Indian Point is 35 miles from New York City, so evacuation would be impossible. I have here two items that may interest people. These are potassium iodide tablets, and I would suggest that everyone watching this program go out and purchase these, and also buy them as holiday presents for every single person you love, because these potassium iodide tablets will help if there is a radiation accident, will help protect your thyroid. It will not keep you from getting cancer, but they're very important. They have a long shelf life. They're available from Aero pharmacies and many other pharmacies. They can be bought online, and I would definitely recommend having these in your medicine closet just in case the wind and rain happens to blow radiation your way, because you can't tell where the radiation is going to go. It depends on the wind and rain. Another useful tool which PACE uses on a regular basis, in fact a daily basis, is this small instrument called a radiation monitor. This monitor will tell you what the radiation levels are. All I need to do is turn it on, and hopefully they won't be high in this room, although I was giving the talk and they were very high, and I think there was a lot of problems in the basement of where I was talking. If you turn this on, leave it on outside for 10 minutes, divide by 10, you will know your average readings, and you can tell instantly if there's a problem. On the PACE website, you will see the daily radiation readings from northwestern Connecticut, which, interestingly enough, has the lowest radiation readings in the state. The higher radiation readings are in southeastern Connecticut. Definitely, they're higher. So this is like another sense. You can't see it, hear it, smell it, taste it, feel it, but this will tell you the truth. And in fact, when our son was buying some property, I took it to a place where he was buying land in Vermont, and there was a big granite outcropping, and I put this next to it, and it went crazy. So I said, please don't buy this land and let your children play here. So this is another very good gadget. It can be ordered online from International Medcom. So Do you have anything more that you'd like to say especially?
Yes. A lot of times, for one thing, on this subject, time goes by very fast, and it's a depressing subject. But there are steps that can be taken to safeguard the reactors and the spent fuel. And it's one of the things that CAN is very active in working on right now. We're working with legislators and congressmen, and we have actually are involved with nationwide groups from across the nation. There's 47 groups, and we are pushing for safeguarding reactors way above and beyond what they currently are.
Can you tell us a little about Mothers for Peace and the landmark work that they just did?
The Mothers for Peace is an organization in California, and the Diablo Canyon reactor on the Pacific Ocean in Southern California was going for a relicensing, and they launched a lawsuit against them because the high-level waste was not protected enough. Under the NRC design basis, threat is the only, their parameters for what they have to protect over. They ruled that they didn't have to protect against a terrorist attack because you really couldn't count on when it was going to happen or anything, and that they ruled that it was not within the utilities jurisdiction to have to protect. And the judge ruled against them. The judge ruled that they cannot arbitrarily just brush that aside. There's been maps of U.S. atomic reactors found in the caves in Afghanistan. There's been terrorists that have claimed that reactors are targets, and the judge ruled in favor of the Mothers for Peace, and that they have to start rewriting their rules and addressing this issue.
Okay, so I wanted to thank everybody who was brave enough to listen to this program, and hopefully it will be a success. I'm going to hold up this shirt because this is really what we all are, and what we want to what we want to try to stop. We're having an event on November 18th, and we hope everyone will come to that to discuss solutions to these problems.
There's lots of them. I wish we had more
Log
time.
on to www.pace-cleanenergy.org, and thank you so much for listening and watching. Thank you guys so much, too.
Thank you.